Moonlighter was one of those games that had me excited for its release last year. I went into it expecting it to be like one of my favorite games out there, Raconteur. If you have never played that game, basically your father abandons you, you're left with a shop and you have to meet budgets by the expected dates. If you don't meet it, like, you lose the shop and it gets foreclosed. Pretty morbid. Also has it that you have to have a timetable. Well, much to my sadness, Moonlighter did not live up to that expectation. The game was less focused on shopkeeping aspect and more on the dungeon delving and crawling. There was no real, necessity to make money other than being able to upgrade your equipment. And whereas Raconteur was oozing with characters and charm, Moonlighter really doesn't have that. There's interesting characters in it, it just isn't filled with characters that are interesting. So the devs have been hard on work on the game and adding more and more content as it's gone along. Between Dimensions marks their first paid DLC, and does it address any of the issues of the original? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it doesn't. Between Dimensions takes place after the conclusion of the original game. So at the end of the original game, you fight the pirate trapped in the dimension, you beat him, and then pretty much you're left with this horrible ending where it's just you did it, we're closing down the dungeons. Really bad. So the game then picks up after that. You wake up from your bed when there is this cutscene of showing a new dungeon bursting from the ground. It's kind of got this weird green aura and kind of looks really jelly-like. So one of the first things you will notice about the game once it takes over into the new post-content of Between Dimensions is the fact that you're now part of the trade union, the dimensional trade union, and as such the town has this more technology-driven aesthetic to it, which is kind of cool. It actually does showcase that the city has grown. You also see that new, more galactic characters can be found in the town, and a new shop can be opened. The new shop is actually, you have to do it. There's no getting around opening up this new shop because the shopkeeper only has certain items that you will need for certain upgrades. Without him, you can't actually upgrade, and it's really hard to actually beat the game without these overpowered weapons. Now, Moonlighter has not fixed one of the most glaring issues from the original. So in order to get anywhere, you need to grind out money and parts for the new equipment. Now, I'm not talking oh, you need a little bit of money. You need actually $500,000 to upgrade one portion to one level. And there is probably 5 to 6 levels on each piece of equipment. Not counting, then you need more money to go to the other woman to enchant it to be strong enough to actually take a hit or do damage. And some of these pieces is just you're always constantly required to find more pieces of old stuff to get new stuff. It's just a really bad setup. Now I digress, you can make it through the new dungeon, but my god, your weapons from the previous content before the post game, they're just about as effective as taking a spork and trying to stab somebody to death with it. They don't work, you need to upgrade, you'll be sitting there for 20 minutes trying to kill one guy. Oh, and to add insult to injury, a lot of the old enemies from the first dungeons, so the very first dungeon with drops that were only worth one coin, they return in this new dungeon, except instead of being they were, they now have 4 times the hit points, basically do upwards to 200-300 damage per hit, and they still drop the shit that you got in the first dungeons. It's just, it's there's no sense of progression with this new dungeon, so you have to go to other dungeons to get the gear. So the other new addition that has been added into this DLC is the inability to return to the town and re-enter the dungeon where you left off. So you used to be able to make this portal, go through the portal, go to town, drop your stuff off, go back into the dungeon, collect more stuff, and you could do this. It only cost you money to do. So what you have to do instead is you have to meet a new merchant on even number floors. So 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever. And you have to pay him to open up new pathways to that floor. At first, when you get to the second floor, alright, you pay a little bit, it's not too bad. Fourth floor, not too bad. The sixth floor requires you to basically have gone through all 6 floors and have enough of a new currency called Jelly Slime to pay him to open up this new pathway. So basically, you have to keep going through the old content, and it's very grindy. Now this would be fine and acceptable if the new DLC wasn't so glitchy and game-breaking. So there's this one enemy, it looks like kind of like a techno palm tree. And what ends up happening is it's not hard to fight. It doesn't really have much stats, whatever. If you don't kill it the right way. So sometimes if there is extra like damage coming in from like fire, lightning, or poison, the techno palm tree will close up and become invulnerable. Well, that means that when this creature is invulnerable, the doors remain locked, or they open up, but you get stuck in the doorway. Now, there's no way to fix this. You can't do anything to this enemy. You can't get out of the room, and since you can't leave and return, you're basically stuck. This pretty much soft locks the game for you, and you have to leave the dungeon. So all of your progress, if you didn't actually go to the merchant and open up new floors, is gone. There's also some other random glitches that can occur, but none are as game-breaking as this one. Some of them are actually kind of funny, like there's one that I got where you were swimming through the floor instead of actually like walking on it, doing anything. You just had like this swimming animation. It was kind of hilarious. Thankfully, the devs are actually working to fix the issue. They are aware of it, they are trying to get into place, but there is no ETA on when it will be done. And I have to say, at least some of the other new enemies are actually interesting and unique. Some of them even come off as good additions to the game, such as the Gas Pirate. I actually do like the Gas Pirate. I like that like he kind of leaves this dot damage, and you actually want to avoid him, that kind of stuff. It's kind of a cool little takeaway from it. And he does drop one of the best familiars in the game, which I absolutely love. It's a little version of the Gas Pirate. Absolutely adorable. So speaking of new items, the game does include a bunch of new familiars and such, as like the items, the armor, and that kind of stuff. So the familiars, they range from like newer enemies. There are some like older enemies you can actually get in this new dungeon, so if you came in later, you can get some of them. The new armor and weapon line, though, is a single pathway. In the original game, you could kind of diverge. You could go more elemental or more raw damage with your weapons. That is no longer the case. You are confined to one solid path line that you will need to follow in order to complete the dungeon. The same with the armor. It is one static line of armor. You can't mix and match. You can't get like stuff that makes you faster, slower, whatever. You're stuck with one solid line of armor. So the items kind of fall into this technology look to them. You kind of come off as this weird cyborgy looking guy with like green hints of like, you know, the fluorescent lighting that comes through it. It works. It's serviceable. The other big thing that is added in this like armor and weapon line is these weapons called trick weapons. They are the dumbest thing I think that were added into the game, unfortunately. So you find a trick weapon. It's usually a blueprint from fighting a monster in the dungeon. Then you have to go back to that merchant from before. You have to give him that blueprint to convert into an item. Completely fine. Well, once you fight with that item, it's like a different item than any of the ones you can get. Once you leave the dungeon, that item is gone. It disappears from your inventory. It disappears. The only way to get it back is to go and spend more money in the dungeon to buy that. It honestly became too much and not worth actually getting any of those. So the big question is Between Dimensions DLC worth it? Well, if you didn't like the base game and you didn't like the aspects of what Moonlighter was before, I would say you will honestly not find this DLC worth it. However, if you did like Moonlighter, you wanted a little bit more of the post-game content and an actual ending to the game, I would definitely say pick it up, but I would wait until they actually fix some of these bugs and actually get it to a point where it's not game broken. So if you guys enjoyed this review of Moonlighter, let me know down below. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscribe, do all that stuff. And until next time, guys, this is Rebus saying, I'll catch you later.